everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Outer Realm, the spin off show of the main show, which is The Outer Realm, which airs on Wednesday and Thursday evenings, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We are broadcasting live this week on the United Public Radio Network UFO Paranormal Radio Network 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. Today, I am joined by Fra McDonald, all the way from Ireland, and we're going to be discussing, historic and haunted locations in Northern Ireland. And he will talk to us about his experiences and his paranormal investigations with his team. He is a founder of Shadow Hunters in Northern Ireland, so we know there's going to be some really great tales to tell. And without further ado, my special guest, Fra, how are you?
Michelle, how you doing?
I'm good. I am laid back. It's afternoon for me, so I'm just still in the chill mode, which is
Oh, not too bad.
fantastic. So, but thank you for joining me. Been quite excited about this show because I am a world traveler. I only stay in haunted and very old locations when I do. I will not stay in new hotels or anything like that, if at all possible. I like the feel of being amongst the history and the spirits and the residual energy, anything that just gives you that semblance of going back in time. I guess I'm an old soul, but you know, so to live in that all the time would just be a lot of fun, in my opinion. But not
Oh
everybody
yeah.
shares the sentiment.
No, I definitely share it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anything old worldly is definitely better.
yeah,
I don't know. There's something about it. It's the atmosphere, the smell,
yeah.
the whole heap, just the whole ambience. It's yeah, no, definitely.
I know it's just what it's all about, It's just for those of us who are enthusiasts, of course. I don't expect everybody to feel that way. I have some people are just like, "What's wrong with you?" I don't know, probably lots, but you know, but
Yeah.
it's like we were, chatting a little bit before the show. For most of us who go into the field, it sometimes goes far beyond just having a healthy curiosity. Sometimes it's an experience. Sometimes it's listening to an experience or seeing, a show that's going like, oh my God, I've got to visit this place. And it goes from there. What was it for you? Let's go back to your humble beginnings.
Um, for me, in truth,
Yes.
I ended up in the paranormal by complete mistake. It wasn't intentional at all. I would have watched the TV shows and stuff when I was younger with folks, and Facebook had only started really becoming a thing.
Hmm.
So I followed one radio station in America online and one paranormal team from Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Um, so one night, randomly, the presenter from the radio show had actually contacted me and asked me would I be interested in coming online and talking about the paranormal in Ireland. Which obviously I'd said I had no
Yeah.
experience whatsoever at that point. I'd watched the TV shows, but I could try and put it, contact the team that I followed to see if they would like to go on. So they accepted and went on and done the show.
Yeah.
So to say thanks, they had asked me would I like to come out and do an investigation with them. So that was my first ever experience
Yeah.
personally and physically within a paranormal investigation. From there, it led on. I ended up, joining their team. A matter of weeks after that, was on that team for probably about 2 3 years before I step away
Right.
and founded Shadow Hunters.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me it was slightly different. I didn't physically go out to join a paranormal team and enter into the world of the paranormal. I was just more of a fan. But lo and behold, the universe
Yeah.
knows its plan and knows what it wants for us. So, you know,
Definitely. It just gives you that
15
little,
years later,
yeah, that little nudge, I just do it for a
yeah,
while. And so what is it for you when I mean for me it's always been about the thirst for knowledge because I come from a family, like a long line of high strangeness, meaning like we have experiencers and pretty much everything. And I think it became a healthy curiosity because I I've had tons and tons of experiences with, in the paranormal, UFOs, extraterrestrials, cryptids. So, what is it for you when you go out there? Is it just for, I want to go to this haunted place, and what is it that just makes it
I
make
mean,
own it?
it's multiple things, for me, definitely the history. The history is, it fascinates me. I've always been into my history, so the history's always been an appeal. But for me, it's the opportunity to go out onto a location that's known to be active, and the
Mm,
attempt to make the contact. I feel that, and it's been said in the past by, by people who don't have a full understanding of what we do. you know
mhm,
you're going out and you're disrupting someone's loved ones, and they're trying to rest and stuff, but it's about going out and actually trying to make contact, for to give those that are left behind, that aren't at rest, an
mhm,
opportunity to have a voice, to have, pass on a message, have an opinion, and still just to be recognized, to be there, and exist in the
mhm,
same way that we do. Just because they're no longer in the physical body doesn't mean they stop existing.
mhm,
So for me, it's about going out and investigating, to try and give them the opportunity to pass on their message, and just to have that recognition that they still exist.
mhm. Absolutely. I think, especially, and you can share your thoughts on this with spirits who pass maybe suddenly, or, they don't always realize that they're past.
Mm.
They're still hanging around, and they're still trying to communicate with the living. I mean, we've been able to settle a lot of spirits down who did not necessarily want to move on, just by saying, trying
Yeah,
to be delicate, but you're dead,
yeah,
and it's sort of like, what? I'm dead? Because they've been sitting here trying to communicate with people in the house who not necessarily have the ability to understand them, and things are going on. And sometimes just by bringing them together with respects to saying, for example, Fred here used to like sitting in this room at 3 o'clock every day with a
yeah.
tea, and your kids come in here at 3 o'clock and just throw his day into upheaval. And sometimes it's like saying, okay, we're going to leave Fred alone for an hour. How long does Fred need? Okay. And everything completely calms down. It's something that simple.
So I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize that as well. A lot of people, even within the paranormal world, they sort of, like, even when they go into locations, it's very much, over here, especially, it's very quick paced. A lot of people think you have to go in, K2 in one hand, millimeter in the other, audio recorder on around the waist,
Yeah.
running and stuff like that, and just going complete absolute hell for leather,
Yes.
and overdrive at it. But some of the best experiences that we have had, we've sat quietly in a room.
Hmm.
We haven't disrupted the atmosphere. We haven't disrupted the spirits that are there.
Hmm.
We have literally sat in that room quietly and just observed. And we've had some of the best interactions that we've ever had, some of the best experiences that we've personally ever had. You
Hmm.
know, and I think that's part and parcel with it. I think, if you approach things in that way, you do learn that understanding, where when people, obviously do, they forget, that they don't know that they've passed on.
Hmm.
You quickly start to learn
Yeah.
the telltale signs of that, so then that you can actually assist them in obviously, as we would call passing over.
Hmm. Yes. I agree. And I've had the same sort of findings where you just leave things alone, like drop recorders and just leave the room, even things come through. And some of the best for me have been through, when you're having a conversation amongst the team, or maybe with
100%.
the owners of the location, and somebody's on the other side wants to put their 2 cents worth in. And I've had recordings or entire conversations are coming in out of nowhere. And I'm like, that's
Yeah,
pretty amazing. Like, it shows you there's just, in many cases, like the awareness and the intelligence
yeah.
is still there.
No, I totally. I mean, what one particular instance that springs to my mind, from our past investigations, where was me and my father was actually sitting in a particular area within one of the locations, and we were probably sitting there about 2 hours.
Mm,
Maybe shared about 3, 4 sentences within the 4 hours, or within the 2 hours, sorry,
Yeah.
of being there. We experienced personally nothing. However, when we went back and we actually went over the audio recorder,
Mm.
I mean, the place was, it was busy. You had, multiple voices coming through, having conversations. You were hearing, raps and stuff like that. But there were things that we didn't obviously physically hear at the time. So yeah, it's amazing whenever that happens. I think, going back to obviously, what sort of interests you with the paranormal. I think that's an aspect of it too.
Mm.
It's what you experience, and it's what you get from that experience. There's nothing more exciting than going out and investigating. And okay, yeah, it would be fantastic if it, was like The Exorcist every single time we went out.
Oh, sure.
Of
Yeah.
course, of course,
Well, those are my kind of
um,
places. Yeah.
yeah, but at the same time, when you go out, people need to realize that it may not seem busy to you or quite active to you, but when you actually go back over audio and video, it can be a very different story.
I agree. I agree. I think that's part of like for me, the most favorite part has always been spirit communication or recordings. Um, what's what's it been like? What's it like for you? Do you like, what's your favorite thing? Everybody's got their favorite thing. Some people it's photography. They love being able to capture something. Other folks it's just not doing anything at all. It's just living in that moment. And other people
Yeah.
like spirit communication, whether it's a ghost box, whether it's some people will do seances or pendulums or EVPs.
Mm. Well, I mean, we use obviously, multiple techniques and
Yeah.
an abundance of different equipment.
Mhm.
I personally like the Estes method.
Yes. Yes.
I absolutely love the Estes method. If you
Yes.
had asked me maybe 2 years ago, what was your favorite then? It would have been like everything. I absolutely love everything
Yeah.
to do with the paranormal, everything about the paranormal, all aspects of the investigating from K2s to millimeters to audio
Yeah.
recorders and further afield, portals, the whole heap.
Yeah.
But for me, I absolutely love the Estes method. I suppose the only other thing that would really, sort of stand out for me was that, the gate, what we call the gateway. Um, so yourself, the small EM pumps only put out a certain level of
Yes.
Gauss per
Yes.
second in the atmosphere. So we built several years back something we called the gateway. So it's literally putting out 60,000 Gauss per second.
Yeah.
So it's a high level of EMF. So I
Yeah.
suppose I enjoy bringing that out because it does put a lot of energy into the atmosphere in hopes that they can start using that for the interact. But no, Estes method for us
Mhm.
is, well, for me personally is absolutely fantastic.
Right. What kind of experiences have you received working with that method?
We have
'Cause
had full-blown conversations,
yeah.
literally through Estes method. Um, obviously, yourself, when you're out investigating and you're calling out, you try and turn it into a conversation. So depending on the question you ask and the response you get depends on the next person's question.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, we've had full conversations, through Estes, and it's always fascinating because when you're actually under Estes and you've got the noise cancelling earphones and stuff on, you don't hear what's going on around you
Yes.
whatsoever. So, when you're the person with the earphones and the session's done, you take them off and you're like, any of that make any sense? And you've got maybe 4 or 5 people sitting around the table looking at you going, uh-huh, yep, 100%. You're looking going,
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing experience.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
big time,
it's a great method. It is,
definitely.
you know? Of course, living in Northern Ireland, you're going to have crazy haunted places, very historic places as
Yeah.
well. So what's the most historic, and active place that you've been to? Leeds?
Ooh,
We all know and love that one.
yeah. Um, Oh, I mean, Do you want one or do you want
Oh,
several?
whatever you
Or
want. Yeah, go crazy. Just yeah, go crazy. It's your
you know,
show.
there's multiple there's multiple that pop into my head. You know, I mean, we were the resident team for the Flame Gasworks in Carrickfergus for several years. I mean, it was one of the last seven functional gasworks within the world.
Mm,
Um, that location was absolutely fantastic. You know, I mean, we have experienced everything from, you know, disembodied voices in the cold storage
mm,
till, you know, mist forming in the basement, you know, shadow figures in the back retorts room. You know, we've had some fantastic EVPs, and even, you know, back in the early stages where the porters were only really being developed and used, you know, we had some fantastic conversations from, you know, spirits that were actually resident to the location. You know, I suppose the most interesting thing about that for us was when we were using one of the spirit boxes,
mm.
the voices that we were getting actually coming through, they even had the accent, the local accent
I
and
love
dialect,
it.
which I found pretty
Mhm,
interesting, you know. So yeah, the Flame Gasworks, you know, Carrickfergus was absolutely fantastic, you know. I mean, it was built and opened in 1855, didn't close until,
wow.
you know, the 70s. So there was an abundance of history. One reported death in the location over the years. But the town that it was in, Carrickfergus, it's quite an active town in itself. It's a seafront town.
Mm,
So, you know, that was a pretty good location. You know, from there, you know, we held residency in the Crumlin Road Gaol, which is, you know, it's known worldwide as being a haunted location in Northern Ireland. You know, the place was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. You know, we'd have been standing there and you'd been hearing doors slamming cells above your head. You know, you'd have had voices, shadow play, you
mm,
know, the whole works.
mhm,
So yeah, I mean, that's just two of absolutely, you know, many locations here.
mhm,
Um, but them for me, they would probably be the main two that I
mhm.
would sort of hold close to my heart, I suppose.
Right. So what's been the most, um like, I'll put it in 2 parts. Um, what's been the most the most frightening? People will say to me, "Well, you don't get scared." I said, "But I do startle." I do
Hmm.
startle like anybody else. So, what was the one that kinda put that little bit of fear or startle into you?
Probably the gasworks, probably the same gasworks in Carrickfergus. I mean, we
Yeah,
we we obviously we do the private side of investigating, but we also do public events where public members can come and join us for
yeah.
a 4 hour investigation. So I suppose the most prominent one that sticks out is, you know, one evening we were doing a public event in the Flame Gasworks in Carrickfergus, and yeah, I had to call an early break for everyone. There was probably me and 6 public members in the basement.
Mhm,
And I sort of had everybody divvied up along the basement in the two sections.
mhm,
But I was standing with one of the public members, I suppose, back from the only entrance exit off the basement, which was a pair of metal steps. And we were watching the shadow going back and forward for a while, you know, low to the ground, and it was intensifying. And then just out of the blue, yeah, it materialized. You could see the legs, you could see the arms.
very
You know,
good.
it was highly distinct, and it kind of came running at us. Um, at that moment in time, yeah, I kind of was thinking to myself, right, okay, so it's literally blocking the only way out. This is not
Okay.
ideal. Um,
Nice.
you know, and I'm also thinking to myself, I have 6 public members down here, public liability insurance. Oh no.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
I suppose, you know, yeah, the Flame Gasworks in Carrickfergus was just that was an amazing place.
It's that place that keeps on giving. I think people too, when you're doing public events, because I've done quite a few public events, and one used to be at a castle,
Mm,
and, you're looking at a couple 100,000 square feet, and you've got, anywhere from 50 to 100 people. It makes it really difficult. personal sizes are always nice, like, the private events, that I would
Mm.
get booked for, but they don't realize, like, it's a whole different feel, I think it's like it could go one way or the other, and you can give me your thoughts, on, your groups and such, because 'cause you've sent photos as well. But I mean, it'll either go to a point where there's all this amped up energy because people are excited and curious or fearful or whatever the case may be. It provides this energy that just sets the place on fire with activity. But then sometimes you just have people who spirits just don't want anything to do with, and they just everything shuts right down, and they'll go quiet, like, for hours because they just don't until that person leaves. And sometimes even we've had it at our home, where a week later, spirits are still quiet. It's just like, you know
Yeah, 100%. We have experienced that, through our public events as well. Um, when we start a public event, I always throw out a few statements. Yeah, obviously your usual health and safety and stuff, but I always like to remind people that, at the end of the day, spirits, they're not performing monkeys. They're
Mhm,
you know they were living human beings like us. They just haven't got a physical body any longer. So behaviors will be the same.
mhm,
Approaches will be the same. So if you approach an investigation with a closed mind and a standoff sort of approach, and you're not putting your energy into it, they're not going to really be interested in interacting with you whatsoever, and I think that can completely throw the balance of the
mhm,
energy off the location and stuff off as well, and it can take them a bit to recover from that.
mhm,
Where we always tell people, when you come to one of the paranormal events, you know you're the investigators for the evening. We're here guiding you. Make sure that you get involved as much as possible. Invest yourself and your energy within those experiments, because the more you put into it, the
mhm,
more you're going to get out of it. um so yeah, no, I would 100% agree with you. I mean, has there been times where we have went out and it's been quieter than others? Yeah,
mhm,
100%. But again, they're not performing monkeys. We're at the mercy of those that who we're trying to communicate with,
mhm,
to come forward and actually connect and communicate.
mhm.
They've got free will like the rest of us.
Exactly right, exactly right. And I think, like anyone else, like, we're all strangers, in their home or their space. And when you're a team and you represent a location and you're there often, they get used to you. They get accustomed to your methods and how you communicate,
Culture.
and you're always respectful, things like that. So it's a different thing, and then all of a sudden, all these people come in. Like the castle, I used to walk around and I would say, the owner was Sir Henry Pellets. I'd say, "Sir Henry, I hope you're having a good evening. That we're having an event tonight. This is how many people you can expect. This is where we're going
Yeah,
to start in the main house and work our way." Because I had like an 800-foot underground tunnel to a huge elaborate stable complex. And says, then we're going to venture off. Second group will be here, here, here. I would actually go and converse with him to let him know what to expect, no surprises. And, sometimes I'd hear footsteps behind me. It's like, okay, yes, we're going to start in blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just,
yeah.
and the house gave it up. Like, the castle for him is the house, but it gave it up. And what I think, and again, anxious to hear your thoughts on this, is people go in with voice recorders thinking that they're just going to start getting all this stuff. For me, I would try to explain to people, look at the environment. They don't understand, or they may not completely get where you're coming from if you're talking about modern type things. Take a look at the environment, ask questions based on the house, the location, what they see around them. If you see a photo, perhaps ask about this photo. Oh, what lovely gardens you had, for example, and look at those roses. And all of a sudden, this little lady's voice would come out. Oh my God, prize gardens and blah blah blah. I was like, oh my God, okay, it's just hitting on
Yeah.
the right thing. So when you have a large group of people, how do you guide them through keeping them happy and the spirit people happy?
I think it's about, well, one, it's about getting them invested as much as possible in the
Mhm.
experiments and what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's about pushing them to make sure that they're they're solely, down that rabbit hole with us,
Yeah.
side by side investigating. I think when you have people invested, the more that they're invested, um, the more of a better approach they're going to have to the investigation. And I suppose they're putting out a more welcoming and a more, higher level of energy.
Mhm.
So I think that's one thing. I think definitely, you know, giving them some general information of the background and location is always good as well, because I totally agree with what you're saying. You have to find that common ground with spirit, and
Mm.
the relevancy. You can walk in with an audio recorder and all the latest technology, but at the end of the day, if that person's passed away in the early 1900s, even right up until early 2000s, they're
Yeah.
not necessarily going to understand exactly what that piece of equipment is. It's
Mhm.
going to be alienating, and they're going to back away. So I
Mhm.
think it's important to even declare the equipment that you're even putting out, and explain that even to spirit as well.
Mhm.
This device here will allow us to hear your voice.
Mhm.
All it has is a light. You can approach it, you know. And I think it's about making people understand that you have to paint the picture with your voice
Yes.
for spirit to understand.
Yes.
And I think by doing that, you're giving yourself more of a chance for to have that interaction.
Mm.
But I think respect is a big thing as well. I think it's about acknowledging them, and acknowledging spirit as a person,
Mhm.
as someone that, as much as they've passed on and they're no longer in physical body,
Mhm.
they're still just like us,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
think that's important as well.
I would say in a more evolved state. Um, I think things even as what brings it to mind is Wayne in the chat room was at a location in Old Fort one time, and they had, professional camera. It said Canon,
Mhm.
and it kept trying to slap the camera out of their hands because you're aiming
Yeah,
at somebody and it says Canon. You can imagine the
yeah,
spirit's kind of like, what is that? Small cannon, but it says cannon and it's aimed right at me. I think we need to maybe factor in things
yeah,
like that more often because it's like people might think, oh, this is an aggressive spirit. No, maybe because you're pointing something at him that says cannon and he's a bit concerned,
yeah.
right?
100%. I mean, a camera flash can be mistaken as the flash from a muzzle of a gun,
Yes. Yes.
things like that. So if you have, depending on the location, even the lights of a K2 can be mistaken for, say, an emergency light, or
Yeah. Yes.
there's loads of different factors that people don't,
Yeah.
take into consideration.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's why when we are dealing with, children's spirits, we bring teddy bears forward, we bring cars forward, things like
Hmm.
that. You know, they're not gimmicks. It's for to
Hmm.
create that common ground between us and who we're trying to communicate. And I think that, I think it's so important, and I think not enough
Hmm.
people take consideration to things like
Yeah.
the cameras, what says Canon and has that flash. You
It's
know,
true. And
yeah,
explaining what the equipment does because it's got to be unnerving to, let's say, a Victorian spirit or one even in your case. I mean, some, areas out in the ancient world, I say, the old world,
yeah,
um, they don't understand what all of this technology is. They see all these blinking lights or you're flicking a
yeah,
flashlight at them and say, "Well, just make the flashlight go." "What's a flashlight? What is this? What is this?"
yeah,
Like, it's I have found that's maybe this is why, like, when we were talking about just having conversations and the recorders are on, they don't really are not necessarily aware that the recorders are there. I've had
yeah,
tapes, back, because I like the tapes even in EVPs, but also in video recording. And I at one location, the castle, the tape went missing, and we were the only
yeah,
ones with keys to get in and out of certain rooms. And I come back to change it over, and it's like I'm there's nothing in it, which is interesting in
yeah,
itself. But on the recorder, the voice recorder, you could hear that there was some activity going on, and there
yeah,
was no
before
way
it.
anyone could
Yeah.
access the room. That's what makes it super, super interesting.
It's crazy when things like that happen. I mean, I remember years ago, trying out a crazy experiment that, with raw UV light, in
Yeah.
hopes of getting some interaction. So in one particular room, we had the laptop and the camera set up,
Yeah.
and we had, the cables all running to the raw UV light, sort of long elements.
Mhm.
We were setting this thing up, wearing visors that were used for welding, because if you look at raw UV light, you're going to go blind.
Yeah.
So we sort of hunkered down for a couple of hours, maybe two, 3 hours, and thinking to ourselves, right, okay, maybe we should go back and check, make sure they're still running okay, there's no issues.
Mhm.
Um, we went back, we put the visors on, we walked into the room, and we couldn't see anything whatsoever. And we're kind of thinking to ourselves,
Mm.
yeah, this
It's
room should be
cool.
lit up with UV right now,
Yeah,
so
that's
we took
just
the visors off.
yeah.
UV lights were switched off, but they were switched off at the wall, and the laptop and the camera was actually tacked away in the flight case that they were
Haha.
sitting on top of underneath perfectly. And we're kind of looking at each other going, this 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 really shouldn't have happened. At the end of the day, there was only two other people that was in the building at that moment in time, which
Yeah.
was, two security guards. I'm pretty sure we would have known if they had walked into the room, because both of them would have been completely blind by now, with it being raw UV. Um, so what the heck? Um, so yeah, when things like that happen, it's I, I
It's
I think it's why people like us kind of look and go, yeah, we know why we believe in the paranormal.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes is it and it's a incredible experience. I think people tend to feel that it has to be a terrifying experience to be exciting. It really doesn't. Like the
No.
fact that some of this stuff when that tape went missing, I was kinda like, no other person coming into the room, but that was the lady of the house, that was her room, which was like a small, like, apartment pretty much, and she was very private, so it made sense. It's just like, "Oh,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, excuse me.
you near enough felt like maybe you were encroaching on her privacy or something.
Yes, exactly, because that was early 1900s, like, probably, World War One-ish, so the cameras would have been something, so
Yeah.
I'm sure they would have recognized that. Okay, a couple of questions for you. Hello, Brandon. Welcome. Could Fault list uh, the equipment that you use because I'm very interested.
Yeah, I mean, we use an abundance of different equipment, from obviously your standard K2s and EMF meters, like millimeters, REM pods, that
Hmm.
sort of stuff. And then we go to, like, we're sponsored by a company over here that makes paranormal equipment in the UK,
Hmm.
called Infrared. So we have like EMF tripwire. So it's about 30 foot of wiring that has EMF sensors attached to it. So depending on what level of EMF connects with them, depends on the color. We use SLS cameras, night vision cameras.
Hmm.
The gateway, which I mentioned to you before, which is
Hmm.
kind of like an EM pump on steroids.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We use, obviously, like the Estes method. We have a portal, um, right through until even, going more spiritual and old school, having a cleansing
Hmm.
kit, that we have with us at all times. Um, yeah, we have a lot of equipment.
Yeah. I think that's where people realize or don't realize often,
Mm,
because you're seeing things on television, that there are a lot of teams that are well equipped. I always said, like, it was a good thing I had a real job to subsidize the fun job
mm.
because, I mean, you're getting into, probably the low to mid, 5 digits in some really
Yeah,
good equipment. I mean, I know
I
yeah, I know a portal itself. Well, I got here one of the originals that were ever designed, and they were, I think there's only two in the country. And at the time, that bloody thing was almost 2 cages for that.
yeah, 100%. I mean, even, over here, even millimeters are
Oh
still
yeah.
holding their worth at
Oh,
like £170.
well, yeah, I remember mine again. Here where everything's so expensive here, but not for you guys. You guys come here it's like a holiday because you're double for the price and what we would be, right? So, but I mean, mine was probably close to about four at the time, so that would be right. If you're 175, you
Yeah.
double that, 375 would be about right. So
Yeah, I
they
mean,
haven't gone
even
down,
a
I see.
even an SLS camera over here is
Expensive.
anything from £400 to £600.
See?
You
Right
know, so
there.
it's not cheap at all. I think probably all in all at this point, as a team, we probably have 25,000 pounds worth of equipment.
Mhm.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
and when you when you set a few pieces out on the table, when the public members are around, or when you're having a conversation with anybody, and you're like, yeah, those three pieces of equipment there total at about 1,500, 1,600 pounds. They're kind of
Yeah.
looking at you going, they're
Yeah.
they're they're tiny, and you're looking going,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's hard, yeah,
doesn't
people
matter.
just, "Well, can we use the equipment?" It's like, "No, it's costly," and sometimes I've had pieces built for me, and I
Mm,
can't you can't always replace them that easily, and certainly
no,
not cheaply, so we would always say to people, "Try to bring your own, if you can,
yeah,
and find alternative ways." Even at some of the events I used to do, I would show them, "This is what you see on television, and
mm,
don't spend that. This is what you can do cheaper, get
yeah,
close to the same results." And it was just about showing them a less expensive way for enthusiasts who just want to go on a ghost walk, for example, or to
mm,
one of your events, for example. And it's a good way where they can just bring a little bag themselves and try to
yeah.
use things themselves.
Well, we always tell public members, if they want to bring their own equipment, they can. It's not a
Yeah,
problem. But
yeah.
we do allow the public to use our equipment.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, we genuinely do.
Yeah.
People will come to our events. They'll be using our K2s. They'll be using
Yes.
our earphones, doing Estes method, our
Yes.
planchettes, bird boards. They'll
Yeah.
they'll be using everything. We're very hands on,
Yeah.
in terms of the public here. We're for to have them fully invested in what we do, and for them to have as much of an experience as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, we let them use our equipment. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But we've always done that. I do know teams that are reluctant to do so, and
I
I
think
can
it
totally
depends on the
understand why.
pieces. The K2s are a
Yeah,
lot easier to come across than some of the portals, for example, or,
yeah,
even like some of the I guess it depends, like we had, even the night visions, why am I blanking out? Um, Flares.
flares. Yeah, flare.
Yeah, so,
Not cheap.
Uh, no, 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 they're not. So again, it's just, and back in the day, especially, definitely not cheap. Now, you can get them, they're more affordable. They make them more compact. Back then, not so much.
Still
So,
about 2.5, £300 over here, even for the small ones that attach to your phone.
wow.
Flare one, I believe they
Yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We've got those as
flare's
well.
definitely not cheap over here.
I remember filming a television show, and Fleer was in the city to where I reside at the time, like the head
Mm,
office. And I said, would you lend a flare for this? It was a huge show, like it's an
mm.
international, and then of course we just plug you right, and they're like, okay, and they brought me this unit. It was huge, and it was worth. I think at the time she goes, "This is worth about $65,000," and I was like,
No
"I
pressure.
don't want to touch it. I don't want to touch it." And it's just
I
like
can totally understand why.
I just guarded that thing like I had no fun. I just could not
Yeah,
let this out of my sight, even when it wasn't being used, but but it shows you where the technology has gone.
oh yeah,
Humbled and privileged to have it on loan to us, and it did deliver incredible images. But it's just like it was
yeah.
frightening experience,
Oh
you
yeah,
know.
100%. I mean, even during investigations and different locations here, if there's been sort of old artifacts that's been part of the location. Like I remember one in particular,
Yeah,
and there was like this particular item, which I'll not say what it was,
yeah.
um, but it was a really old artifact, and I was kind of like, can we put that maybe in the middle of the table and maybe try doing a séance?
It was just
And they're like,
high.
"Yeah, sure, that's no problem, no problem at all." And they came to put it actually in the middle of the table, and they're like, "Yeah, that's probably worth about £950,000." And I'm kind
Yeah,
of looking,
that's
going, put it back in the cabinet.
That was
Put it back in the
maybe we don't
cabinet.
want that after all. I know. It
Yeah,
is
like I
frightening
don't even
because
want to
it's
breathe on that right now.
the level of responsibility just takes away from everything else
Yeah,
because oh my God, I can't even imagine, damaging something like that or accidentally knocking it over or, frightening. But, here we are.
yeah.
you know, um, Question, Brandon, what's the most active case you've had to deal with? Example, poltergeist was the next one as an
Okay.
example.
Suppose the most active case that we've ever had to really deal with was a private case in Northern Ireland here. Private case expanded over 4.5 years. So a long time. We were back every 6 months.
Mm,
And every 6 months we were investigating. We were getting some of the same things, but we were getting newer stuff happening on top of that as well. Um, we were continuously doing a cleanse every 6 months that we were there, and couldn't figure out why. Every time we were, for want of better words, fixing the problem. It kept coming back, but not quite the same. Um, so we done a bit more digging, a bit more investigating, and it turned out that there was, for want of better words, witchcraft involved. In the location, and
mm,
with the people in the location. So we had to then change tactics. It was no longer about investigating; it was about educating,
mhm,
and about trying to help put that to bed. So we had a meeting after the last investigation with the people in the location. And decided that it would have been best, for that person to maybe stop practicing,
mm,
and we sort of, become the caretakers of the items that they had, and we done a cleanse on the person. Um, but over that 4 years, that 4.5 years, the activity was crazy. I mean, there was reports of people feeling like, someone was standing behind them. There was, machinery within that location that constantly was malfunctioning.
mhm.
Engineers were coming out and looking and couldn't find anything wrong. There was reports of, knives coming flying off sideboards, chairs being stacked on top of tables. Um,
Poltergeist, yeah. Or
yeah,
psychokinesis, one of the two. Yeah.
well, I think there was maybe a bit of both.
Yeah,
But like, yeah, poltergeist activity, shadow movement, like the EVPs and stuff that we were coming back with were crazy.
yeah.
And even like the machinery that was malfunctioning, it was brand new machinery. It shouldn't have been happening. And again, the engineers, they were coming out, they weren't finding any problems. Um, it didn't help. Obviously, the location was within the walls of an old, monastery, as
Mhm,
well.
yeah.
So yeah, I suppose that would be, probably one of the most active cases, that we probably undertook. I can't really give too much information,
No, it's
just with it
private
being a private case.
yeah. Yes.
But it was yeah, it
Yeah.
was it was it was a long 4.5 years to get to where we needed to be, with it. But the experiences that were had were eye
Mhm,
opening, and definitely, I think they led the evolution of us as well, because we learned as we went along with the different things that were happening as well. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting case.
mhm. It gets really tough when you're dealing with those, type of situations because especially, I mean, poltergeist activity, you look at the ancient Ram Inn, something that sits for centuries and just keeps getting stronger and stronger because it's an energy. And then we've
Yeah,
got, technically poltergeist activity is a projection of energy, right? So somebody went all psychokinesis back in hundreds of years ago and just
yeah,
must have been in a foul mood because this thing attacks everybody. But anyway, it's hard to say to someone, like, how do you address somebody who could be projecting energy? Whether it's a child going through
yeah,
menopause or through through going through their own adolescence or changes, or like puberty, and then you have women going through menopause, and they're like, women are emotional creatures, man, and we can project
Hey,
energy like nobody's business. But
now you said that, I didn't. Okay,
okay,
just for the
I
record.
did. I'm one. I know I've done it. you know, but with that, it's how do you approach somebody and you know that it's centered around all of these emotions. It goes to show you that we're pretty powerful beings to be able to project energy like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
100%. I mean, when it comes to the approach and those sort of things, I think
mhm,
you eventually develop a thick skin,
yeah,
but you still have a lot of empathy towards people. So I think it's about being willing to ask the hard questions,
mm,
but I think it's about how you word those questions at the same time.
mhm,
And I think when you're upfront with people, I think that that is a big thing. It's a case of approaching people, in a way of, look, I'm not saying this is a case that this has happened, um, but we still need to ask the questions to eliminate them.
mhm.
And I
Yes.
think when you explain it to people in that manner, I think they understand that you're only doing your job, you're being thorough, and trying to get them an answer, so they don't mind answering
Mhm,
questions at that point.
mhm,
Where if you kind of went in, direct, cold, forceful,
mhm,
people are gonna, again, even with investigating, people are gonna back off and go, whoa, okay, I don't want to be dealing with this person. It's
mhm,
too forward and too much invasive. So I think it's about having that empathy and making people understand that you're there to help them.
mhm.
Um, it's about how you word things.
I think so. I've only worked malevolent, um, situations, and because of that, and people, when they're dealing with their faith at the church, you're dealing with the Catholics. They want, for example, they want a psychological or psychiatric assessment. That's not easy to say. Are you on any medication?
Yeah,
This is what I need from you, because if things escalate, then you want to lean on dealing with your church or your organization. And they don't all require that. But then you have to, it's not easy to say, I need not one, but two assessments done, just, because that's what
yeah,
they will require. And then I would need permission from the doctor to
yeah.
be able to
I,
work with
I
you.
mean,
It's hard.
over here is kind of different. Um, we would be the people that people would approach rather than necessarily going directly to the church.
Yes.
Um, how do I put this? Um, we would go into places and deal with things that possibly the church wouldn't.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
obviously, the Catholic Church being related, linked directly to, Rome and the Vatican and stuff. There's procedures in place.
Mm,
There's steps that need to be taken before any intervention can happen. So in the case of somebody feeling like they need something dealt with very quickly and there and then, they'll contact ourselves. I mean, we even have a short process, but for us, I can have 10 private cases on.
mm,
But if someone phones me tonight and says, "Look, listen, I'm having activity in my house, in my home, it doesn't feel safe, and I've got two young children," the case with the children will take precedence
mm.
over all the rest of the cases, regardless. Um, so yeah, I think it's a lot more difficult, especially over here, for
Mhm.
the approach it that way.
Yeah. It's never an easy situation even to try to describe to somebody or explain to somebody you're actually projecting energy, something as simple as that. I've just taken off to sending articles. If you see something that looks a bit familiar in here, it might be
Yeah,
this, But then
yeah,
I say, look, we're very powerful beings and you're just manifesting your power. People are like, oh, yeah, yeah. It's easier though to think that there's something malevolent in the space, than it is to think that you're powerful enough to be the one even projecting things like this. It's all very fascinating. Everything connects on, different levels. You sent
definitely,
it.
definitely.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna play your video. Do you want
Oh,
me
go for it.
to
Yeah,
play the
sure. That's
video
good.
and, then we can sort of, you can we'll play it. Do you wanna describe what it is before we go with it?
Sure, yeah. So basically, the video clip is of a private investigation that we done in one of the locations that we would go to
Mm,
regularly. So some of the team was in the gym in the basement of the location. They were gathered around the spur board, doing a spur board session. And then in the far right hand side, there's what would be a deadlift frame. So it's basically a frame that you put the weight discs on and you do your deadlifts with. So those particular frames, one side of them are slightly weighted, so they sort of sit at an angle.
mhm.
And what you'll see is why the people around the spur board are actually doing the session, that frame actually moves off its own accord.
Oh, wow.
Pretty cool catch for us. We were pretty,
Good.
once we reviewed it and we seen it, we were, yeah, it was like Christmas.
I guess so. All right. Hey, sometimes it's just those things I just realize that's why I'm here. All right,
Yeah,
let's
definitely.
all right, I'll put this up and we're going to play this. Here we go, kids. Yep.
So that entire frame moved.
Yeah.
Um, so the frame was sitting there. We were in from earlier on that day, and that frame was sitting the exact same way the entire time.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Like and like I said, yeah, the sound. She goes, "It was their sound." Well, yeah, I think we heard all the shuffling around in the back too, didn't we?
there was a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the main thing was the clank of the frame. Actually,
Yeah.
it didn't exactly just fall. You could actually hear the clank of the frame hitting the ground as if it was actually, physically forced down. So yeah, that was pretty interesting piece of footage.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I also have pictures. 1 second here. Bring that up. So I will bring up photos and you can I'm assuming these are like events, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so put this one up first. All right, here we go. There we are. All right. Looks like a little bit of intense energy happening over there.
Yeah. So this was actually this particular photo was over a Halloween period a few years back. This literally is a group séance underway. Um, we would have big groups that would come to do obviously the events.
Mhm.
So when it comes to seances, sometimes we'll do smaller numbers around a table, but sometimes we'll do one big group seance,
Yeah.
which is exactly what's going on here. This is in the middle of a wing in a very active jail. Needless to say, the people after that, yeah, anybody that wanted to go to the toilet, they were asking if they could be escorted.
Um, nice. Well, you know you're doing really well when, when they ask for, help getting out of the building.
Yeah,
So
but when an adult needs chaperone to the bathroom, I think you're on the right track.
I love it. Okay, I'm gonna put up another one here. I like this next one. This is, great overhead. All right, here we go.
Yep. So again, this is just another variation of a séance with the public.
Mhm.
That photo is taken from the level above as a downward shot. But obviously, as you can see, everybody's got their pinky fingers connected up to generate that kinetic energy around the table and try and help coax spirit forward. Yeah, they're fantastic sessions.
Yes.
Everybody enjoys them. Um, and
Yes.
yeah, I
I
mean, look at the picture. Need I say any more?
I know, it's great. I love it. I just, the energy is just always,
Yeah.
it's
I think
so
it's a great
impressive.
way of actually getting people invested. As we were saying earlier on about getting people invested in the investigation. I think when you have people physically around the table, hands around the table, and the fingers are connected up, I think it's a good way of getting people actually invested in the experiment and what you're doing.
Mhm. It
This
does.
particular one is not actually a public event. This is not a
Mm,
public event. This one is actually of some of the team members at a castle in Northern Ireland here.
mhm,
That a friend of mine actually, it's her location. So she invites us in from time to time to do an investigation. So this would be a tunnel, actually under the castle that leads from the vaults, across to the graveyard.
mhm.
Um, Black shapes have been seen in that tunnel. Like a black mist would form from time to time.
Mhm.
You would hear footsteps in the gravel behind you. Yeah, we have had some interesting sessions actually in that tunnel.
Right, I bet you have. Um, well, I think just the history of the area. I mean, you have to think about why castles were built in the first place back in the day, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that particular tunnel, the castle itself,
Mhm.
we thought it was old, until they discovered an old Viking settlement.
Yeah,
Still, actually, it was actually on the land of where it was actually built.
yeah. See? There's lots of history there. Just the
Yeah,
history
yeah.
itself, you have to wonder who's roaming around and, was it how do they pass? Then you have things that love to hang out, like in this case, in the old graveyards, just to prey on the living, if anything.
Oh
Grieving
yeah,
attracts some pretty powerful ethereal energies that want in on some of that.
most
Um,
definitely.
okay, here we go.
So this is another public event. People are doing some plans yet, work around the table here. This is actually in a railway museum that we had done a couple of Halloween events in.
Hmm.
So this particular museum would take trains from all over the UK and Ireland and restore them.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of history just in the trains alone, never mind the building that this particular experiment's taking place in. Um, we've had a lot of shadow plays within the carriages.
Hmm.
People have reported, um, yeah, people have reported seeing things moving around them. Um, Very intense place at certain points. I mean, even some of the team have had experiences in the carriages, of sort of shadow people coming closer towards them, things like that.
Hmm.
You can tell whenever the atmosphere is changing very quickly.
Yeah.
It can become quite tense, at the drop of a hat.
Yes, I can imagine. It's true. I've been in these situations. I'm putting this one back up because looks like somebody sees a face up high. Face up high, eyes and smiley face. Does anyone
Okay.
else see this? Oh, there we go.
I can see what they're talking about there.
Yeah, right
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
literally just there.
Okay.
Um, what's
Pareidolia?
your take? 100% part of it.
Yeah.
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 The ceiling and the walls is
Hmm.
made of old limestone, sandstone.
Hmm.
So they're kind of gritty and uneven. So that's just a reflection from the red torch light.
Okay.
Although good spot, mind you.
It's in a
It was a
good
good eye.
spot. It does raise I mean, again, I love it. People just sort of see things and get kind of wiggy. One second here. I'm just trying to get another picture. Okay, there we go. All right. This is going to be the next one. I think that's going to be one second. God. All right, this thing opened up really huge for some reason, so bear with me, guys. It's as big as my face. So, all right. All right, here we go. There we are. This guy.
Okay. So this is in a jail that we investigated in the past. Yeah, pretty interesting picture. I'm pretty sure you can probably see what we see there, Michelle.
Right in there. Yep, right here. Is
Yeah,
that what is that?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. The flash was on the camera.
Mhm.
Um, there should have been a reflection there of the
Mhm.
camera light as there is around sort of,
Well, you can yeah,
the
you
walls
could
and stuff.
see it, yeah, spinning around like a like, you know,
Yeah, yeah, you can see
mm,
shoulders,
legs.
right down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh, very interesting. Great capture.
And that was took just with a, believe it or not, with a standard camera on a phone. There was nothing high tech or anything used in that capture whatsoever. It was literally
Mhm.
just a bog standard Android phone took that picture.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it just shows that if the elements are right, the conditions are perfect. If people are
Mhm.
very approachable and they're coming with the right attitude, the right energy,
Mhm.
like you can even catch something, as unique as that on something as simple as a camera on a phone.
I've seen it done. I mean, sometimes it's all people have. They come to your events. I've had great recordings captured by kids, who
Yeah.
come on tours and, you know, the historic tours, and they're just taking pictures or doing the EVPs. Again, I'll say, the castle, and
Mhm.
it's because it's very pretty much benign, and end up with like
Yeah.
incredible things, even residual sounds and things like that, and great captures. I mean, some of these phones now have better
Yeah.
cameras than you know what you can buy. I think it's great.
Who needs a Canon when you've got an iPhone?
Yeah, yeah, right. Exactly. Pretty much. Yeah.
But
Uh,
it's the same even whenever it comes to EVPs. I mean, the amount of times that people came to me and went, "I think I've got a voice," and I'm
yeah,
looking, going, "Okay, that's here." And the next thing they're playing, it on the memo on their phone.
yeah,
They've recorded it on the phone and you can hear clear. Okay, yes, condenser mics are fantastic. They're going to give you a better shot at capturing EVP evidence. But you
yeah,
know, if they want to be heard, they can be heard, even
yeah.
on a phone.
Loud and clear. Throw a rock at
Yeah,
you. That's happened. Those stones at you, and it's like I'm here. I've had that
yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I've had a lead bar through at my head. It's not it's not as fun as people think.
no, not always. A little hazardous. He
Yeah.
says, "Do you color change the photos after to see the details, etc.?"
So yeah, what we would do is we would change the matrixing. So we would
Mhm,
invert color. Obviously like of your sharpness, contour, stuff like that. Um, we try not to do it too much,
mhm,
because you can ruin the photo. You can completely remove what's imprinted there,
mhm.
by going too far with it. But yeah, we would till a degree.
Yeah,
It's like, we use all the high tech equipment but for me, I'm still, very much in the old school mindset of, I think, 8 millimeter Cinecam and reel to reel audio is the best way forward. I think it's easier for the imprint on. You know,
yeah,
I, you, you know, you look at these cameras these days, and even if it's camcorder or if it's on the phone, they all have the software on built into them for the, fixed dead pixels, make the picture as clear as it possibly can.
mhm,
I've always asked the question of, is technology, as much as parts of it is fantastic, is some of technology actually hindering us with our investigations? Is it physically removing the evidence that we're
mhm.
trying to capture? Because the software is built to make the picture as
Like
clear as
stripping the
possible.
EVPs, for example, like on Audacity, and stripping it down, you tend to lose, right, some of
Yeah,
yeah, the
yeah,
audio.
definitely. I think if you
Same.
strip it too far, then you're losing,
Mhm,
potential evidence there for sure.
mhm. Yeah, sometimes technology is great when it works, and sometimes it can work against you,
Yeah,
right?
100%,
So
100%.
mm,
When you think of, things are designed to give you the best quality that they can in terms of audio and visual.
mhm,
What is it removing? What is it stripping back? What are you actually losing in between
mhm,
the original raw, footage or audio
mhm.
and the clearness that it's actually making it be? There's something in between there that's definitely being removed, and I think we're probably losing potentially 20-30% of potential evidence, because of that.
So what are your thoughts then? I mean, I'm pretty old school. I still like tape. I like doing EVPs where things, right down to the fact where you only use one side of a cassette so nothing bleeds through, because you can't
Mhm.
fudge, let's say, I love Polaroids. You can't fudge that. You can't fudge film camera. You can't, film video until it hits the computer. Whereas with digital, sometimes you get these little pinging noises, and in some of these digital recorders, for example. I mean, I
Yeah.
resorted to buying really expensive ones, going into hundreds of dollars, just so I didn't have all of those little sounds. Yeah, you get the DR60. Wait a minute. This little guy, I want one of those.
Yeah.
Panasonic's, DR60, and they're this just tiny little thing, but it seems that people in the field really love them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have, dictaphones there that you know are run by tape, which I think are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
We have some audio recorders there that, they are modern,
Mhm.
and they give you crystal clear results.
Mhm.
Um, I think personally, I wouldn't go above an Olympus audio recorder if you were going digital,
Mhm.
because the older Olympus recorders don't completely remove the static in the background, the white noise in the background.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the meat is on the bones. To be honest with you,
Mhm.
I think that is where it's at. So I think if you're stripping that away automatically, the chances of
Yeah.
you capturing an actual EVP is a lot
Mm.
slimmer. So in certain ways, modernization of equipment is good. Like your
Yeah.
EMF meters,
Oh, sure.
your sensors, things like that. But
But
I
it's
think there's certain things that you shouldn't
yeah,
mess with too much.
it's really hard because the technology is fantastic. I always take my hat off to anybody who can create equipment that can help within the field. I think it's an evolving thing,
Yeah,
Great things are coming out of it. Not a lot of great things. I mean, even when I started, coming out with the spirit box. Like, I had
yeah,
one designed, and I had gotten to know Frank Sumption in the last years of his life, who
mhm,
he was, aside from, Tesla, he was the one who brought back the telephone to the dead, as he called it,
yeah,
and I actually have one of his, which was gifted to me by a really dear friend of mine, so I've got an original, but at the time, he wasn't making them as much, so I ended up having a different one designed, and I'll tell you
yeah,
something, you connect one of those suckers to that portal, it's a whole different experience, especially in reverse mode and like,
100%.
yeah, you can do incredible things with it. But one thing that always stood out with me is doing an event. A woman came in as one of my guests when she messaged me and said, back in the 70s, I was at the castle and I took a photo and I captured a
Mm,
woman in this specific room and I would like to bring the photo and I would like to bring the negative to show people because it validates it, right? You can't fudge the negative. Do you
no.
know the young people, the kids and younger adults that were there had never actually seen a negative?
Do you know what? That actually doesn't surprise me. Um,
Right? Yeah.
I'll tell you a really depressing piece of information from Northern Ireland. The Ulster Museum here in Belfast actually has one permanent display,
Yeah.
and that permanent display has negatives. It has the old school cameras.
Yeah.
It has floppy disks, cassette recorders,
Yeah.
Walkman. It has CD players, DVD or not DVD, tape,
Mhm.
VHS. It has all these things, and I'm kind of looking at that display in the museum, going, I remember using every single piece of that when it was brand new and only out on the market.
You age yourself going, "Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's
I
like
was
it's like
there."
when am I
Yeah,
getting a display next?
I know, right? Oh, okay, well, I'm gonna ask a question, quit being in Belfast that, I don't know if you've been asked before, I'm sure if people can make the connection, but have you been down to the old White Star Lines, area where the Titanic was built and ever done any recordings down there or investigations?
Titanic quarter.
Yeah, of
I
course
have
you
been in
have.
the Titanic quarter many times. I used
Okay,
to used to regularly walk the Titanic quarter in the evenings,
yeah,
with my father, and a few of the team members have been down that direction with me. Yeah, we have run some spirit box sessions. We've done some Estes method. Um, we have done tours of the ships. Uh, yeah, it's quite an active area. It's a fascinating area, fascinating,
Right.
um, but
What's the
quite
most
an active
interesting
area.
you captured there?
Well, we found out through Estes that now when I say Estes, it was like early days Estes,
Yeah.
that there was 101 souls actually had fell off a ship while it was being built.
Wow.
Um, and needless to say, they all didn't make it back out of the water. But
Yes.
that went unrecorded apparently. So we had
That.
got that through Estes. I suppose for us that was a pretty defining
Mhm.
piece of information, because we're looking going, okay, this is not on record.
Mhm.
Um, that's pretty interesting, pretty new.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it court itself,
Yeah.
it's amazing, that the dry dock, the stand in the dry dock, and think about the thought that it's where the ship was built. You know,
Mhm.
it's again, it's like as you say, when you stay in a hotel, you want to stay somewhere that has history, somewhere that has that feel, that has that atmosphere, it has that smell.
Exactly.
It's the
I'm
same with Titanic Quarter.
I mean, it would be hardship anywhere, any ship being built. We're labeling Titanic because it's the most famous, but you took your life into your own hands
Oh
every
yeah,
single time. You building these behemoths, but this is the one, of course, that is commemorized and because it was Titanic. Right? So,
yeah,
but it's I I knew you'd come out. So yeah, so we got something there. That is one of the most exciting things for me is when you can have a spirit validate history and putting something in the moment where not a lot of people were in that moment. And maybe the people, like you say, there was 101 people who died. And what went through their heads? What did they hear before this happened? What was the experience? Sometimes the
yeah.
only ones that will tell you are the spirits of the deceased. They're the only ones who will give you that information.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. You
Yeah,
know, when
yeah.
when when we got that information come through the equipment, I mean, the only thing that sort of went through my mind in terms of, obviously thinking of what it would have been like at that point in time,
Yeah.
was sort of obviously the despair, obviously that era was, it was rough. People were
Mhm.
malnutrition. There wasn't, a lot of money around,
Mhm.
for people to, live well as such.
Mhm.
But I could only imagine as they were trying to come off that ship, that just hearing the clanging of the hammers with the rivets, and
Mhm.
the noise of horse and cart on the cobblestones and things like that.
Mhm.
When you're standing there and you're getting something like that coming through,
Mhm.
through a piece of equipment, you can near enough immerse yourself in that area
Mhm.
back when it was,
Yes.
that era. And I think, again, I think that's part of the paranormal that sort of keeps you going as well, is being
Yes.
able to immerse yourself in that location and its history, and
Mhm.
actually, stand there in that location and visualize it as it was. I
Yes.
think that's amazing as well to be able to do that.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember investigating in Chillingham Castle,
Yeah.
over in England, and
Yeah.
yeah, like I remember sitting at
Mhm.
the grand table in the grand hall, and sitting at the top of that table, and staring down this long table and chairs, and you had the big massive horse with the knight on top of it at the end. And
Mhm.
I remember just sitting there thinking, wow, like you can imagine, like this would be the norm for somebody to go and sit and have their dinner, you
Yes.
know
Yes.
like it's just crazy to think of it, and then to immerse yourself in it, and
Mhm.
realizing that that was the norm for somebody, again, like the Titanic quarter, realizing, the
Mhm.
hardships of the era
Mhm.
then, and the hardships and stuff. It's crazy.
It is. It is. Life definitely goes on, and sometimes there's just pieces of the past that remain. And part of the paranormal is to try and get some of the answers that you would not normally have. It's not always about, just, I don't know. Like for me, after a while, I found it hard to just go, like, I didn't really want to go to a cemetery anymore to do the recordings. I didn't want to. I wanted I wanted answers that were that would benefit history on different levels as well. Like a lot of places that I've been to, it's just like trying to get those answers. I was actually asked to develop a series. I did develop a TV series for somebody else, and it was all about that. They said, if you come out of retirement, what would be the one thing you would film? I said it would have to be history based because the dead speak, and that's exactly what so many researchers um, so many researchers do. And I think it's just everybody wants the hype, for
Yeah.
media, right? They want the hype, they want the spooky. And this is just so much more meat on the bone.
I think everybody wants Amityville, or they want The Conjuring, or like I say, The Exorcist.
Yeah.
It's like, when people say to me when they were coming along for the first time to the public event, is it as scary as you see on TV?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose in instances, you and I can both agree that it can be,
Yes. Yes.
depending on what's happening. But what people forget is, TV shows, they have the atmospherical music in the background all the time, which
Mhm.
intensifies when something's about to happen. They have the camera angles, things like that, which all play on the psyche.
Mhm.
So uh, when you say to people that it can be, but come along and experience it for yourself, you know
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
that's the reason why we say it. You know.
It's different. It's different, and I think a lot of it is different just for every individual. I did,
Mm,
one of the haunted tours in Scotland, and they were on the show, and it was a hoot. And people get attacked there all the time. Mackenzie Poltergeist. I'm thinking, okay, I'm ready for this freaking guy. Let's just go, right? And I get them like, hmm. But it's just like I
yeah,
waited. I'm out there going, I'm putting out the vibes and everything. But I guess it's just because I don't go in like I'm not fearful, so I don't let off those endorphins,
yeah,
right? I think
yeah,
if you go in and you've got those endorphins going on, those are the people's, like the energy may naturally gravitate to those who are like, all right, I'll give you a little something. Or the non-believers. Funny how it can go from one side to the next. It's a double-edged sword. The ones who don't believe
yeah,
in anything, who get all the activity, and the ones who are flopping those endorphins out, you know. But those of us who just go in with no real expectation or no real fear, it's
yeah.
hit and miss.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I mean, if your endorphins are flying around the
Mm,
body, and you're afraid, you are putting out a higher level of energy. Don't get me wrong. Now, the only thing with that is that energy itself it's more short lived
mm,
than if you're staying calm and putting out just a standard, flat frequency of energy. That's going to be sustained longer. And I think through our research, and with our point of view on that, I think that's why, you know when it comes to, negative interaction when we're investigating, I think negative interaction for us is short lived compared to positive, simply because in terms of energy to spirit, it's like a quick adrenaline rush. It's a quick hit,
mhm,
but it burns out quickly. Where, if they're feeding off the positive energy that's being put out, it's a more sustainable and a longer sustainable
mhm.
sort of energy. So I think you're going to get a lot more longer communication that way.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I agree with you. Um, with getting back to media and having a huge amount of paranormal groups that are out there, um, what do you find it hinders the field? Like media will hinder the field. I think you have a lot of people who they just don't get the opportunity to go on investigations. The only thing they know about the
yeah,
paranormal is what they're being shown, and the only thing they want to show on television is the fear factor side of things. You know, that's
yeah,
ratings, you know, and a lot of groups out
yeah,
there who have started up. And I always commend people who want to start their groups. If they don't have anybody in their area, absolutely go ahead, start something. But try to lean the methods through, like, do your research. I think, like, you can't go around, for example, "I command you to do this." That's not gonna
Yeah.
work.
No, no, 100%, 100%. Yeah, look, I totally agree with you. I think media is definitely projected the paranormal in a certain light where locations kind of like going, do we really want this publicity? Is this sort of something we want to be putting out, to do link to our location? And we do get locations that don't want to do that, and they automatically think that that's exactly how it's going to be projected.
Mm,
So they're not willing to work with you. What I find over here is that there is a lot of teams. There's a lot of teams that are, dare I say, amateur teams that have just popped up overnight and maybe bought a K2 and audio recorder off Amazon and think, yeah, we can do this. One thing for us, we're registered as a business.
mhm,
Shadow Hunters NI is a limited business registered under the social science and humanities sector for
mhm,
the purpose of research and development. So we go about things the right way. If we are going to a location and investigating that location, it's because we have explicit um, go ahead and confirmation from that location that we're allowed to be there, and we will get permission. 9 times out of 10, we'll meet the person and be handed our keys and make sure you lock up when you're done. But we'll always make sure that we have that permission before we enter a location. There's a lot of teams that have maybe just popped up overnight that don't really know the ins and out of the paranormal world, and they'll pop up into an outdoor location that's owned by you know the state or whatever, and they'll investigate and maybe leave some things behind, and that projects a bad light as well.
mhm,
That projects a real bad light because then you become paranormal becomes unprofessional. Paranormal becomes a lawbreaker or rule breaker,
mhm,
because of these people doing that. Where there's teams like ourselves that we work hard to connect with locations. We work hard to you know work with these locations in terms of getting connection and access to the location. We make sure we're courteous. We have all our legalities in place. So it's not just a case of I fancy becoming a ghost hunter or a paranormal investigator,
I
whatever
don't
way they
even
want
like
to
the
call it.
term ghost hunter. I just feel it's so insensitive, you know?
Yeah, a hundred
Yeah.
percent, 100%. When people call us Ghostbusters, or they call us ghost hunters, I'm kind of like, really? Come
Ouch.
on, come on.
Yeah.
We haven't spent this length of time and the amount of money on
We've
equipment and the
evolved.
amount of time. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Look, it's the paranormal world isn't even necessarily being labeled as a pseudoscience anymore. Physics are starting to
Mhm,
gather new information now. That's confirming what we're experiencing to be a subconscious energy. So,
mhm,
if physics is starting to bend the knee and agree in certain aspects that okay, there's more substance to this, and you know
mhm,
there's a bit of evidence here that we can sort of start going down that road of believing.
mhm.
If physics can do
Yeah,
it,
and physics can do
anybody
it.
can do it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. I think that, it's very hard to be reputable in a field that is essentially known, falls into the category of the obscure. How do you get credibility in something like that? You do the best that you can, and if you're not careful, or you get labeled, it does close doors.
Yeah,
To and that's like, because I did the same, as you did. I mean, I was, a company and insured, and I copyrighted everything,
yeah,
just, because of all the tours you used to do and events and things like that. So you have to treat it, I think, like a business. But I mean, that's an expense that a lot of people, can't go through. But I definitely think that there are do's and don'ts. So if you have somebody that wants to start up, what's your advice to them?
for someone that wants to start up a paranormal team, I think the first piece of advice I would give them is join a team first.
Yeah.
Get get yourself involved in a paranormal team that's established, a team that knows what they're doing, knows the
Mhm.
do's and don'ts. Get experience that way first.
Mhm.
Um, I think experience is key. You know,
Mhm.
you and I can both agree there's no instruction manual
Yeah.
to the paranormal world.
No.
So I think, this is one of these things where, you can go online and you can get a certificate in paranormal investigation,
Mhm.
but you better believe that at the bottom of that certificate will say this is not a certificate that will get you employed. So that tells you everything you need to know about doing a course. What
Mhm.
that course does is it gives you basic understanding. But I think the best basic understanding to get is to join a team. So that
Mm.
would be my first and main piece of advice is, if you're interested in starting into the paranormal world, join a team that's already established, learn the
Mhm.
ropes, put the work in, put the
Mhm.
hours in, you know,
Mhm.
and then take it from there. You never know. You could join that team and want to stay in it. Never
Mhm.
mind starting your own,
I
And if you do
if
want
you're
to
able
start your
to,
own,
a lot of teams don't want to take on new people, I find. So in
yeah,
that case, to take it another level is just,
yeah,
do some research and go on a ghost tour. Go on
yeah,
public events where you are within a group of like-minded individuals by people such
yeah,
as Fra, who will teach you the do's and the don'ts. And I've known a lot of people who've started out that way because sometimes it's all it's all you have,
yeah.
learn.
I mean, at this moment in time, I have multiple people on Shadow Hunters NI, that have became members of the team through coming to public events.
Mhm.
We recruit all the time.
Yeah.
If we see potential in someone, we're not gonna say no necessarily. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
So any of those teams out there that are stand off and be like, no, sorry, we're not interested in recruiting. I think they hinder themselves too, because I think you could find that there's a diamond in the rough there, um, and you could lose out on the opportunity of having a fantastic team member there by not at least sitting down having a conversation and looking into the possibility of trying that person out on your team.
Mhm.
I think you really do hinder yourself that way, because you could lose a
Mhm.
good team member, a good future team member that way. You
Mhm.
know.
Mhm. I think so. I think so. Okay, this is the part of the show where you promote yourself. So for our audio listeners, let us know the website and tell us what you got coming up. We're getting into spooky month. God, I have a lot of stuff coming up for that.
Oh yeah, it's the busy time of year. So our website is www.shadowhuntersni.com. Um, all our public events, about us, everything you want to know, it's all over on the website. Halloween, busy period, as you know.
Yes.
So we have multiple events coming up. We have several 4-hour public investigations, and we have some 2-hour investigations. So they're going to be split over two locations. So one location, which is the location I'm currently sitting in, is the Blackstaff Mill, in Belfast here. This is where our office is based. It's an old linen mill from the 1800s. Absolutely fantastic location. Ton of activity in this entire building. It's where we work out of. It's where the team gather twice a week. It's where we train. It's where we learn. It's where we investigate, on a regular basis. So this is one of the locations. We're kind of bringing people into our home over Halloween,
Wow.
to investigate our home with us. So that's going to be really exciting. The other location is another mill directly behind where we're based here, called Conway Mill. So it's another little mill. Ton of history with Conway Mill. Ton of activity. Ghost Hunters, at one point, the TV show actually had went and investigated the location itself as well. But that mill's fascinating also. So yeah, we have plenty on. We're working on a ton of stuff behind the scenes as well for the team. Some unique opportunities have came forward over the past several weeks, which unfortunately I'm not at liberty to
Yeah, of
say
course.
anything about at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
But watch this space, because they're, yeah, exciting times.
I could tell. The way you're beaming, it's going to be something good. Well,
Yeah,
thank you for joining me. I'm so glad that we connected because it's been a great show. Learned a lot, and I know the archives will do very well. So you guys, you'll be able to see the video archive. All the audio archives will be on over at least spread out through a couple hundred different locations. There's a place for everyone. For those of you guys who are tuning into the Outer Realm, tomorrow night, Dr. Christopher Macklin is going to be joining the show, exploring the realm of angels, multifaceted messengers and guardians, and their esoteric connections. You know that's going to be good. Thursday, Tobias Whalen joins to talk about his new book, which was authored alongside Richard Estep, Mothman, Sightings and Investigations of the Iconic Cryptid. I have had so many people say, "What are you going to do a show talk about Mothman?" It's like, it's not like I haven't tried. It's just only so many people that really know it in and out. And I think this is going to be that show. So thanks to everybody in the chat room, and thank you to Fra for joining me. And we will see you all tomorrow night on the Outer Realm. Good night. Good afternoon for those on this side of the world.